And we are live here in the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner, as always. And today I am super excited to be joined again by my favorite writing duo in the whole world, Lynn Constantine, Valerie Constantine. You know them as they write jointly as Liv Constantine. They have a brand new book that comes out tomorrow. Excuse me, to move my fingers. The Senator's Wife. What an amazing book. You guys have knocked it out of the park again.
Oh,
Um,
thank you. Thank you.
I don't know what to say. You guys, you never have a down year, and you just keep our adrenaline peaked out all the time. And I don't know what to do with you guys, but anyway,
We don't know what to do with ourselves.
thanks for joining me, Valerie and Lynn. Um, how's it going? You guys have had a kind of a bunch of news swirling around. We've got a new publisher on this book. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
From Harper to now Random House. That's always exciting, isn't it? Getting
Oh, it
It
is.
is.
to
Yeah.
connect with a new team
Working
and
with a great team. Yeah, they're just
Yeah.
amazing. They've been phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
awesome.
We cannot say enough good things. So supportive and just on everything, from the very beginning all the way through.
Yeah.
Love
We
it.
feel like we're in just
Great
an amazing
family.
hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always good to feel the excitement of other people that are excited about a project,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Yeah.
not that your other publisher wasn't. I don't mean to
No, no, of
say
course.
that, but
No, they were,
you
yeah,
know
they're great too.
it's
Hmm.
new faces and folks are always fun. Um, how long has the Senator's Wife been in the works? I know with publishing schedules, it's probably been off your desk for a while. When did
So what
the
year is this?
first thoughts about these characters start coming about?
It's probably 21, right? At least, I mean, it took 2 years to write, so
Oh wow,
it might have even been twice right
It's
after.
really hard to pick a year anymore after the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it
Seems,
was 2020. Yeah,
the,
I think it might have been, yes. But
maybe end of 2020, right?
yeah, that was like 2 years that lasted a decade, wasn't it?
yeah, right.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
was
exactly.
forever.
Yeah,
But this one did take long. I think this took longer than anything that we've written so far.
Gotcha.
with the exception maybe of the last time I saw you. That took.
Oh, that took time too. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
This one is unique in several ways. Um, there's a dead body or dead bodies, we'll just put it that way, in like the first 10 pages, which was, a little shocking. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen from here? And then I, because as a reader, you're always, trying to get a step ahead of the writer. Oh, I know what they're going to do here.
Right.
And, this thing happens and, oh, now we're going to have a flashback, is then how did this happen? And that's not the story at all. It was talk a little bit about this setup to the story, which you just, because we've been trained as readers to kind of think, because if you're writing in a certain genre, there are certain tropes there, and I don't mean to use trope as a bad word. I think some of these terms have kind of been thrown about, and but it's just a reality of the genre conventions. And you kind of think that you're looking for a certain thing, and then you're not. What was the idea about starting a story like this that would throw readers, off their footing, so to speak?
Well, I think part of the reason that it took so long is because it went through very different renditions. And initially, that wasn't the way that it had started. It was a quieter book, and so in revision, we wanted to really engage the reader, and as opposed to having what happens in that first chapter be a flashback, we just thought it would be more visceral to actually show it in real time, and then just jump ahead to the aftermath and begin the story that way. So that it was sort of by a process of, I guess, elimination, or in revision, that we came to telling the story in that way. And because we wanted, originally you just had Sloane like thinking about this great relationship that she had had with her first husband, and
Right.
all in flashback and memory. And we wanted to just have a little, let the reader have a real glimpse into a day in the life of what it was before, and then go forward from there.
Mhm. Yeah, into her marriage, and also then the man that 2 years later she marries. You also get a
A
glimpse
glimpse into his
to
prior
his
life.
marriage and his life. So it just seemed better to start out with that bang of no, uh, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and be in the moment with them.
Yeah.
And of course, the real story, the story itself, begins 2 years later.
Right. Right. This book deals with politics, but not in the typical sense, or should we say, politicians more than
Right.
politics itself.
Mhm.
It's not a political thriller,
Not at all.
although it does kind of revolve around political figures. Let's put
Yes.
it that
Mm,
way.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I'm trying to
Right.
drop things without
Yes.
Right.
spoiling
You're
story,
doing a
but
good job.
yeah, there's and Valerie, I understand. I think I remember from one of our previous conversations that you worked in politics, kind of.
I worked, yes, I was not a politician, but
Right.
but I did work in Washington, and I worked in the scheduling office of the White House. So we and, I was just an assistant, and we did, things like, traveling, the advanced teams that would go out before they traveled, to different countries, different places all across the US, and even down to the simplest thing of, either the president being invited to a birthday party or a wedding or something like that. Um, but no matter what your position is, how senior or how non-senior, when you are working there, you really do see what power does to people. And there is that really exciting part of it too, where
Yeah.
you are right in the middle of history being made. You're seeing
Right.
speech, you're seeing a State of the Union address before it's delivered, and that sort of thing. And there is an excitement about that can be not wonderful. I mean, can
But
be
intoxicating, right? Very
very
intoxicating.
intoxicating. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I would imagine that that's true whether you're talking about the party on the right, on the left, the
yes,
people in the middle. That
mhm,
once you get
yeah.
to these areas and this level, that it doesn't matter where you come from. It's
No,
all a
no, you're
swirl.
in these lofty positions where most of the people around you are yes people, and I mean, it would be very difficult to
Yeah.
maintain your balance and keep your feet on the ground.
Has the desire been to write a book with political connections? That this is the first time you guys um, have broached a character like this, right? I don't remember.
Right, in our let's see, I
In
think
our writing, yeah. I mean, in the Elsie Shaw, there's a senator, but
Right.
it's not the main
mhm,
thrust. There's a political undercurrent. But yeah, in terms of our books, this is the first one with a
our first, DC setting.
yes.
Yeah. Because you've gotten to see the kind of the undercurrents underpinning everything. Valerie, has that been a have you been looking for a way to kind of weave a story like this, or did it just
No,
kind of make sense with these characters?
no, funnily enough, no. I really had never thought about it, and, I'm not sure how thinking back so long ago, it seems now, how we even decided that it would be, um, senators or that we
Well,
would
Yeah.
I think we talked about, it's the story of a woman newly married to a man in a powerful position who becomes vulnerable. A caretaker is brought in, and then she starts to worry that this woman may be after her life. And so we talked about what kind of a powerful person that could be. And I think we both said, I mean, we thought like, well, what about a governor? Or, then we said, no, I think a senator just seemed to fit the
mm,
bill. And initially, it was going to take place in there. He was going to be a senator from Connecticut, and it was going to take place in Connecticut. And then we decided, well, no, we should move it to DC. It will be much more fun.
move it to Washington, right.
Yeah.
Love it. There's an interesting cast of characters in this book, and A lot of your books and a lot of psychological suspense or family drama, the focus is very tight and narrow a lot of times, and your cast of characters kind of opens up the scope of this story a little bit. It's very much focused on these characters, but it's a little broader. It was how difficult is it to, especially when you're hiding secrets and you're playing with the reader's emotions, to kind of pan the camera back a little bit, to have a wider cast of characters, more viewpoint characters? And is it more difficult or more easy to kind of weave the deceptions throughout when you're dealing with more characters?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's easier to have more points of view, um, because you have a larger cast of characters who might be unreliable,
Right.
and several options for a reader to choose from. Is this one telling the truth, or is that one? And um, so and we I think we really find it interesting and fun to create different characters and different ages. It's just it makes it more interesting to write.
Yeah.
Would
Yeah,
you
yeah,
agree?
I think it can get a little, for us, tiring to be in those in one and just in one person and having one person tell the story because it's very limiting, right? And as Valerie said, you know, and sometimes we're not even that deceptive. I mean, we are, but we aren't. But like, for instance, with Athena, she's up to something. I mean, from her point of view, I mean, it's very
Right.
clear she's got an agenda. You don't know what it is, but I think that that's a lot of fun. And then, we loved Rosemary, our 80-year-old, the mother-in-law, Sloane's former mother-in-law,
Right.
and she was just a great character to create. And I think it's really more. Robust. The story becomes more robust when you get to see it from these different points of view, and it keeps the pace going, all of it. I just find it a lot more interesting. I like to hear that. I kind of get tired of being in the same person's point of view.
Hmm.
Well, ever since Gillian Flynn published Gone Girl, we have never trusted a narrator
Right.
That's
since.
true.
And the default is kind of like, well, I don't trust this narrator. And it has to get harder and harder to keep readers, um, guessing.
Yes.
Um, but at the same time, you guys have found new and unique ways to motivate those unreliable narrators. Like, they might not be telling us the truth, but we don't know why they're not telling us the truth. And
Hmm.
that's really where the gotcha is not that whether they're telling the truth or not, but
Right.
just
Yeah.
not knowing why
Right.
and what the story is behind that.
Hmm. Yeah. That was the
Yeah.
fun part of
Yeah,
Hmm.
this.
what's it like to find these characters' motivation? How do you start kind of peeling back these characters before you write them to find out who they are and what they're up to?
Well, you don't really find out completely who they are before you write them. We have an idea of who they are, but they really come alive on the page. As we've already said, this one took a while and it went through a lot of iterations,
Yeah.
and that's because the characters grew, and especially the protagonist, Sloane. She was especially difficult, I would say, to bring into a fullness that we hope we've achieved. I'll let you, if you have any, um, or not.
No, 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 no. I think that's true. I mean, I think the other part of it is knowing their backstory and what trauma they've undergone, and that informs a lot of what their motivation is as well. So if we know, you know, because we have to know why they're doing it too. Like, we're not just going to create a character and say, okay, she's doing this or he's doing that, but well, why? What is the motivation? What are they getting out of it? What's driving them? And so even whether you want to call it the anti-hero, the antagonist, or just another character, they have goals that they're trying to achieve as well. And so we just try to make sure that that's all fleshed out. And sometimes that is the reason things change, because as we do get to know the characters, we might learn, you know what, this character would not do that. So we need to rethink, how, if we want to stay on this path, how do we make it work that still makes sense? Because we never want something to just come out of left field with absolutely no grounding for the sake of shock value. That's not satisfying to anybody. So it really has to be genuine and it has to make sense.
We've talked about your the way that you share writing duties in the past, and uh, with a book like The Last Mrs. Parrish, where you have two kind of definitive viewpoints, and you guys talked about splitting those viewpoints, and one of you writing one, and with Amber and
Daphne.
Daphne. Thank you. I
Mhm.
couldn't grab Daphne for some reason. And how you've got these two distinct voices. Well, with this book, there are four viewpoint
Yeah.
characters.
Or mhm.
So how'd you split, or did you kind of take that same approach to this book?
No. So really, Parish was the only book that we did that with, and even in Parish, we both wrote in the other points of view as well. But our process has evolved with every single book, and what we realized was that we both have to be 100% invested in every character, and because they're appearing in each other's chapters anyway, they're all. It was a little easier with Parish because it was one whole story and then it switched to another story, so it was not as intertwined. So we just divvy scenes up, and it doesn't matter who, it's not like, oh, I'm going to write all of this person's scenes. It was just like, okay, I'm writing chapter 1, you're writing chapter 2, and we edit each other's work and give each other feedback. And sometimes one will write a half a chapter and the other will finish it, and vice versa.
Yeah. Our writing, our collaboration has evolved quite a bit from
I was
the
going to ask you that,
beginning.
because if we include Circle Dance, is this the fifth book that you guys have written together?
6, including
Sixth.
Circle Ends.
Okay.
Right.
How has your writing process evolved over 6 books? Because if we go back to where you guys wrote that first book together, this was a passion project, and then a few years later decided to write thrillers together, and I would assume that as this machine gets to rolling and now you're on a publication schedule and people are expecting things from you, that the way that you handle the writing has got to evolve and change, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, it has. I think I don't know that if we've come to the final, you know, evolution of it, if things will
Yeah.
continue to change. But I would say at this point that there is not a page in the book that doesn't have both of our writing on it. So I don't know how that can evolve any further
Right.
unless we do that Google document, which neither one of us wants to do, where you're actually really writing the sentences together and changing words. But I think we'd lose our minds doing that.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to each be in our own zone when we're writing. And
Yeah.
Even though you are separate, and maybe thinking differently, or about different portions of the story, do you find that you are anticipating what the other person is thinking or would think? Do you, like Valerie, do you start thinking, well, this is what Lynn would do, or Lynn, do you think that, that in terms of the way Valerie would think?
I don't think that so much, but what does happen is that we will, so like, say, for example, we have a character and we want to give them a family and or siblings, and so we'll say, well, so let's talk about siblings for this character, and then both of us will say, how about just one brother, and we'll say the same thing,
Yeah.
and that's when it gets a little scary,
Yeah.
when we'll name somebody the same name, and it's sort of like a mind meld
Hmm.
sort of thing. Yeah, but we definitely have to. I mean, I don't think about what Lynn is writing or doing while I'm writing. And funny thing is, the times that when we are together, and a lot of times this happens when we're editing, we've been able to be together because it does make that a little bit easier. But if we're in the same room and we're each writing, and I'm on my laptop, which is very quiet, and Lynn has a clickety clackety, and I hear her, and it's really distracting. And I'm thinking, what is she writing? What is going so fast? What is this going to be? So, yeah, we definitely have to be in our own zones.
For sure.
Yeah.
Lynn, you mentioned earlier you also publish as L.C. Shaw, and those books, while they are different from a Liv Constantine book, they're still you can the ghost of Liv Constantine is on those pages. Do you notice or is Liv Constantine like this third figure in your writing relationship?
Interesting.
Does
It's funny.
you've got Lynn, you've got Valerie, but then does Liv? I can't put this into
I know
words
what
like
you're
I want
saying,
to,
and
but it's
yeah,
almost
no,
like the pen name becomes a third person. Do you
right.
guys ever notice
Hmm.
that?
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that we're both sort of live, is kind of how I see it, but I know what you're saying. It sounds like a horror movie, kind of like this
It does.
third persona coming out and saying, "I'm Liv. The two of you have to go away," right? Like that might be a interesting story,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll dedicate it to Hank.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Oh man. What is your you said that you guys like to edit together. What is that process like? Do you have a time where
And
okay,
we
the
like it.
drafting's done, it's
Yeah.
time for us to come
Yeah.
together?
Liking it is quite an overstatement.
Yeah, yeah.
It just makes it a little less tedious if
Yeah,
we're together doing it. This is when
gotcha.
when we get edits back from our editor at the publishing house. Yeah, it makes it a little bit easier.
That, yeah, because we can divide and conquer. But before we get to that point, when we edit together, it's some of it is more developmental and broader in terms of we need to add this, or we need to change that. But when we're getting into the nitpicky things, that's the part that's very what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Well, it's a little bit painful, I guess. But we sit there and go through it page by page, and you need you've left out two here, you need the a here, you need a comma there. There's an extra word there, or sometimes just changing words, and that it just takes a while. You know what I mean? But it's the stuff that you have to do.
Yeah, it's tedious.
When
Mm-hmm.
you're starting a new book, do you guys sit down and brainstorm the plot and the way that the twists are going to? Do you start thinking kind of in terms of not specifically about the characters, but about the situations, the plot, that how that's going to unroll, and then add characters to it? Do you guys approach it
Exactly.
that way?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, we come up with
Absolutely.
the twist and the situation 1st. Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And that can take a while, actually.
I bet.
You
I
know,
bet
a back and forth.
especially if you're trying to come up with twist that will genuinely keep people
Mm.
guessing. That
Yes,
that has to be hard.
it
how
is
do
hard.
you work through that?
Yeah, that's
A lot of brainstorming, and back and forth.
and
And
and when you have somebody to bounce things off of, and you just keep going back and forth, then it's two heads of ideas rather than just one. And something I say then might spur something in Lynn that if she were working alone might not have thought of, and vice versa. So it's sort of like feeding each other, and then bringing out maybe what the best ideas are, because there have been times when we would talk about a situation, and one of us will say, well, what if blah blah blah, and then the other one is, but then it was this, or I mean, it just it just helps, I think, to build on each other. It's just like any kind of brainstorming session,
Yeah.
that you have so many different ideas, and you just have more to choose from,
yeah,
rather than I mean, maybe we would come up with it on our own in a longer period of
Right.
time, but it's just very helpful. That's one of the great things about collaborating.
Yeah. There's nothing like having a person to bounce ideas off of, even if the other person isn't giving you the answers. There's something about just talking it out,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
your brain will come up with answers that the two
Yes.
of you never could come up with. And I would imagine having a person in that role all the time has to be amazing.
It
Yes, it
is.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really helpful. Yeah. So, and even as the writing goes on too,
Yeah.
gee, I'm here in the chapter and I don't, what do you think? I don't know where to go with this, and so you have somebody then again, and you can bounce ideas off of a friend or a
Yeah.
spouse, but they're not in the story the way both of
Right.
us are.
Right.
So
Is it getting easier or harder to be Liv Constantine? 6 books in, does it get easier or does it get more complicated and complex as it goes?
I mean, I think each book is just hard, right? And
hmm
yeah,
so,
there's no, it definitely doesn't get easier because you're always trying to better yourself, and you want to make the next book, if you can, better than the last, and
Right.
whatever that means. So it's tough.
but it seems like it should because like if you're a piano player, the more you practice,
Right.
the better you get, right? Or
Right.
in sports or any of those things. So it seems like, well, okay, the more books you've written, the easier it gets, but it just doesn't seem to.
But also, if you take the piano player analogy, the better you get, you start challenging yourself with more complex pieces, which
That's
then
true.
That's
becomes
right.
harder. And
Yes,
it's like the better you get, the harder it gets if
Right.
you're constantly pushing forward.
that's
Right.
true.
And writing's kind of the same way, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, that's true.
Man.
So
The what's coming up next for you guys? Are you working on your next book?
we are. Did we
Yeah.
just finish the second draft?
The third draft.
Third draft. We're writing a
Interesting.
sequel to the Last Mrs. Parrish.
Yeah. When how do you come up with when you have a story with such a um definitive ending, and by definitive I don't mean it was a satisfying ending, let me put it that way. How do you start resurrecting that story and thinking, well, what happens to these characters next? That has to be a challenge because everybody has this certain vision in their mind. And do you weigh reader expectations with what you think is going to happen?
I mean, we obviously don't want to disappoint readers, and the reason that it has taken this long for us to even, decide to write a sequel is because we wrote a prequel novella, The First
Right.
Shot, and that there's a character in that, Daisy Ann, who is perfect for the sequel. So this sequel will have her, we'll have Daphne, we'll have Amber, and we can't obviously tell you why or what's going on, but um, we think it's a pretty fun, and hopefully people will love it just as much and will enjoy being back with these characters and seeing what they're up to.
I love it. I can't wait. Tomorrow, the brand new book, The Senator's Wife, releases everywhere. Hardcover, Kindle edition, audiobook. I actually listened to the audiobook over the weekend,
Oh,
and it is fantastic.
oh, that's great to hear. We
I,
haven't
I
heard
had
it yet.
I
I
haven't
had
had the
read
chance to
the
do that yet.
I had read the book a month and a half ago or so, and then listened to the audio to just get the story fresh in my mind again.
Oh,
It was a completely different experience, but I was familiar with the story, yet getting to experience it all over again. And
Oh, that's
that's what I
great.
love about audiobooks is
mm,
you know the story, but it's fun to kind of relive it again in a
it is.
different
It's
way.
a different experience. You're
It
right.
is.
Yes.
It is. If folks are just discovering you guys, God forbid, where can they find you online and
Um,
pick up the new book, pick up everything in your back catalog, all that good stuff?
liveconstantine.com, which also has links to all our social media. And we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we also have a Facebook group for readers where we do a lot of personal interaction that can be found. There's a link to that on our Instagram page at Live Constantine too. And again, everything on the website. There's actually a link on our website as well to the reader group.
Excellent.
So
We'll link that up, send everyone to see you. Go grab The Senator's Wife, out everywhere tomorrow. Lynn, Valerie, always a pleasure to
thank
catch
you,
up.
Hank. It's always great to
Pleasure.
talk to you
It's
as well.
wonderful. Always, Hank. Thank you so much.
Yes.